Hello. Welcome aboard, everyone. Apparently, I don't know my own command names. Either that or the bot didn't have permissions to post it. But whatever. Hi, welcome to an adventure. It is Wednesday, so that means it's time for another Archival Adventures. And yeah, whether you're here on the library's Twitch channel, VTUL Studios, or my personal channel, Rogan27, welcome. It's great to have you here. Let me look and see who else in chat. Matt M33, hello. Hannah, hi. Fluidan, hello. Stephen Joyce, NeoGets, hello. I think I saw a subscription. Fluidan, thank you for resubscribing. 28 months. Lord Portico, did I say hi? If not, hi. I don't know who I've seen and who I haven't seen now. Now I'm lost. But yeah, welcome in everybody. Hi, Shadows. If I missed anybody, hello, welcome. It's great to have you here. I also just can't see the bottom of that window. There, that has fixed that problem. Yeah, welcome to another adventure. This one is a continuation of our series of speculative fiction, exploring some pulp sci-fi, and we ran across a list. I don't remember when we came across the list. Hi, Wannabe Sayuri. But a while back, we took a look at issue number 1 of Comet from December of 1940, and someone named Sam Moskowitz had a letter to the editor in issue number 1 of Comet. Turns out Sam Moskowitz was a prominent, at the time, science fiction critic. And his letter to the editor listed 19 stories that were published in Astounding Stories between 1933 and 1935 as classics. My general understanding of the term classic would require the items to be more than 10 years old. However, I was curious, and so we have been once a month visiting the stories that were on Sam Moskowitz's list to see if they stand up to that description as classics. Today will be number 11. It is a story titled Old Faithful, by Raymond Z. Gallun. I don't know much. There might be stuff in the finding aid command. I think it has to do with interplanetary peace, but I'm uncertain. So would this be the Moskowitz? Yes, indeed. I think that is an accurate description. Yes. A tale of interplanetary cooperation and rebellion. But first, as has been our regular practice, we haven't read about this author before. I know nothing about them. So we're going to learn about the author. Feel like I should change the Moskowitz command to Moskowist. Raymond Z. Gallun which I know it looks like Gallun, but it is apparently Gallun, like balloon. Born in 1911, died 1994. It's all the same thing, really. More of a Moskowitz. Oh dear. I enjoy the wordplay. U.S. author and technical writer from Wisconsin, traveled a bunch in later years, began publishing science fiction stories at the age of 18 in November 1929. His first was The Space Dwellers, and it was in Wonder Stories. The Crystal Ray in Air Wonder Stories. In the 30s, he made a 1932 contribution to Gernsback's science fiction series, and published frequently in F. Orland Tremaine's Astounding, which is what we will be looking at today. His most famous contributions being the Old Faithful series, posthumously assembled as the Old Faithful Saga, collection of linked stories, 2005 ebook. Okay. Old Faithful, The Son of Old Faithful, and Child of the Stars. We're looking at the first one today, which is just Old Faithful. And the other two are not on the list. So we likely won't get to them, but apparently this is the first of 3 stories. And they are his most famous contributions. Okay. I'm not going to read what it's about, because we'll get that from reading the story, but you can potentially see it on screen there. Along with other stories, the first 3 were collected in The Best of Raymond Gallun. Published 120 plus stories, most of them during 1929 to 1942. Also used the pseudonyms Arthur Alport, Dow Elster, Evie Raymond, and William Callahan. And his first book, The Machine That Thought, published in March of 1939, was published under the William Callahan name. Okay. From a very early date, many of his stories show an interest in biology and genetic engineering, not widely shared by his contemporaries. Became inactive in the 40s, and though he published further work from about 1950, he never regained the popularity of his early years. Although one of his finest stories was The Restless Tide from November 1951. Okay. And yeah, the U.S. Convention Icon gave him its Lifetime Achievement Award in 1985, and then in 1987 they renamed their Lifetime Achievement Award to the Raymond Z Gallun Award. Their website is undergoing significant renovations at the moment, so I have chosen not to bring up the Icon website because it doesn't really have any useful information for us. Okay. Apparently, middle name is Zinke. Assuming I pronounced it correctly, considering that pronouncing his last name was a surprise. Interesting. Okay. So this is the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction. Wikipedia has an entry on him with a lovely grainy newspaper photo. And this is where I found out rhymes with balloon. So yeah, there's an entry here. I don't know that there's anything really extra here that we need to go into. If you all see something when you take a look at it, let me know and I can come back to it. But I don't know that there's really more here than what we got from the Encyclopedia. And then this, which is this is not the official, because this is not the Icon website. This is the science fiction forum wiki, but loads much faster and had better, for ease of sharing, access to information about the Gallun Award. So 85, it was awarded to Gallun at Icon 4. And then it was renamed in his honor in 87. It's presented every year jointly by the Science Fiction Forum and Icon for outstanding contributions in the genre of science fiction. And there is a partial list of past recipients on here. I do not know if it has been awarded recently. I think Icon shut down for a period of time, and from what I get from having tried to glance at their website, I think they are in the process of trying to restart the convention. So I don't know if it's been awarded since 2007 or not. But big name author, apparently, even though I was completely unfamiliar with any of his things. But today, we have the December 1934 issue of Astounding Stories. And we're going to take a look at apparently one of his best known works, Old Faithful. Which is not the cover art. The cover art is for The Mightiest Machine by John Campbell Jr. But good stories don't always end up with the cover. Of course, Pulp Magazine. The most important content on the inside, the first thing you see, ads. Yep. Okay, so this is volume 14, number 4. Ain't it always the way? Exactly. So the Thought variant serial, The Mightiest Machine, that's the Campbell one. There's a Donald Wandre in here, Colossus Eternal, which if you were with us for the second item on this list, the second story on Moskowitz list that we looked at in September last year was Colossus by Donald Wandre. Ooh, congratulations, Stephen Joyce. You've been randomly selected as a VIP for the stream. Enjoy your digital gemstone and the ability to alter pun points. So this issue contains the sequel to that story, which isn't on the list, so I had not planned to dive into it. But yeah, throwback to last September. Hi, Elixir. I hope that California is treating you well. Sorry, brain derailed. No survivors. Okay, so then the novelette, Old Faithful, is the one that we're going to look at today. Based on the fact that they're calling it a novelette, I highly suspect we will not manage to read the entire thing. in which case I will do as I have done before and find a copy of the text to throw in the VOD description, or a link to the text. Looks like a couple of names that I wasn't familiar with before, but am now, thanks to having done this series. Stanton Coblentz being one of them. Okay, well, looks like we're going to page 106. Also, apparently, the most amazing typewriter bargain ever offered is 10 cents a day with a 10-day free trial. I'll take 3. I mean, honestly, today, if it was only 10 cents a day to get the typewriter, that's not a bad deal. I'm just 10 cents a day for how long is my question. But that's not where that's the irrelevant. It's not what we're here for. Forever. I mean, today we're used to renting all of our hardware and all of our software and all of our content and the place that we live and the food that we eat, and nothing belongs to any of us today. So the idea of renting a typewriter for 10 cents a day is where my brain goes first. But I suspect that it was a purchase of a typewriter and they're breaking it out to 10 cents a day is the resultant cost. But I don't know. I'd have to dig into it. Anyway, Old Faithful. The illustration that we have on the left here. I'll zoom out just a tad so that you all can see the whole picture, because it's a really neat picture. In the depths of the crystal was an image of the third world. And it's really cool illustration, the line drawing illustration here of what... Okay, we've got a basin with some sort of liquid in it, and what appears to be the Earth? Possibly? If it is, then this is North America, I believe. Beside the point. Anyway, large structure with a bunch of balls and struts that is pointed towards an opening in the ceiling with a star field outside it. So I'm assuming this is a telescope. And then some other vaguely like scientific looking instruments here, but this is what I think is the most interesting part of this image. Because it looks like a jellyfish with a snail head and a pair of robotic legs is using the telescope. I'm gonna zoom in on that part so you can see what I mean. So, mechanical legs, apparently. And what seems sort of like a jellyfish-ish type body. But that definitely looks like a snail's head. It's almost the Hanar from Mass Effect. I suppose if we had the opportunity to quiz them about the enkindlers, we would know for sure. Classic jellyfish snail combo. Exactly. Hannah, I'll search for it tomorrow, and if I can't find it, then I can't find it. But a lot of these have been available on... See, this story has been republished multiple times. But a lot of these have just been available either in scans of this or other forms, because I know for certain that Astounding Stories is no longer under copyright. Because I looked at that. So it could be out there, but it might not. All right. I'm going to dive into the story now because I'm very curious about this jellyfish snail with the giant telescope. Old Faithful, a novelette of the problem of communication, heroically and tragically solved, by Raymond Z. Gallun, illustrated by Elliot Dold. Incidentally, this is a prime example of what Elliot Dold is known for as an illustrator. The line drawings, the intricate alien machinery, that is spot on Elliot Dold. If number 774 had been a human being, he might have cursed bitterly, or he might have wept. Certainly he had reason to do so. But number 774 was not a human being. His fragile form bore not the slightest resemblance to that of a man. He knew nothing of smiles or frowns or tears, and whatever emotions passed within his cool, keen mind were hidden even to members of his own race. The two messengers who had come to his workshop that afternoon had not seen into his heart, and he received their message with the absolute outward calm that was characteristic of his kind. At the end of 40 days, number 774 must die. He had lived the allotted span fixed by the rulers. That sounds like it could be the beginning of Logan's run. With food and water as scarce as they were, no one had the right to live longer unless he had proved, through the usefulness of his achievements, that it was for the good of all that he be granted an extension. Otherwise, the young and strong must always replace the old and weak. In the opinion of the rulers, the work of number 774 was not useful. It was without value and was even wasteful. An extension of lifespan could not be considered. Number 774 must die. Having imparted this information, the messengers had crept into the streamlined hull of their ornithopter. Silvery wings had flapped, and the weird craft had lifted lightly, circled the great isolated workshop once in parting salute, and then had sped off into the west toward a distant city. In obedience to some impulse, number 774 had ascended to a high-placed window in the towering wall of his domicile to watch the ornithopter go. But long after the glinting metallic speck of its form had vanished into the sunset, number 774 continued to stare out toward the west. Pools of purple shade swelled and broadened in the hollows between the dunes of the Martian desert that stretched in undulating flatness to the far horizon. The sun sank out of sight, leaving only a faint reddish glow that quickly faded out at the rim of the world. The Martian sky, deep purple and shot with stars even during the day, became almost black, and the stars, veiled by an atmosphere only 1/6 as dense as that of Earth, gleamed with a steady and eerie brilliance that is never seen by terrestrial observers. It was a strange, beautiful sight, and perhaps in other circumstances, something fine and paradoxically human in number 774's being might have appreciated its wild and lonely grandeur. But natural splendors could scarcely have interested him now, for his mind was too full of other things. In the sky was a tiny, gray-green streak, which he knew marked the position of an approaching comet. For a long moment, he stared at it, and then his gaze wandered up among the welter of stars and sought out a greenish-silver speck far brighter than any of its fellows. For many minutes, his attention clung unwavering to that brilliant point of light. He knew more about that planet than any other inhabitant of Mars. He had never heard its name, nor in fact did he have a vocal name of his own for it. To him, it was just the world which held the third orbital position in order from the Sun. And yet, for him, there was concentrated in it all the hopes and all the fascination of a lifetime of painstaking work and effort. Gradually, by patient, methodical observation, he had wrested a few of its secrets from it. He had learned the composition of its atmosphere. He could describe its climates accurately. He even knew something about its soil. But beyond such superficial information, for a long time it seemed that he could never go. And then one night, when, with stoical resignation, he had all but laid aside his fondest dream, a sign had come. The third planet, Earth, was inhabited by thinking beings. It was not a spectacular sign. Neither was his conclusion guesswork. Number 774's telescope had revealed, on the darkened side of Earth, between the limbs of its crescent, a barely discernible flicker of light flashes, evenly spaced and repeated at perfectly regular intervals. Only a high order of intelligence could have produced such signals. Dominated by a new zeal, Number 774 had constructed a gigantic apparatus and had duplicated the Earthian signals flash for flash. It's good to see you, Elixir. I'll see you when you get back. Immediately, he had been answered. Then, he had tried a new arrangement of the flashes. And the unknown beings on Planet 3 had seen, for they had repeated his signals perfectly. For 5 Martian years, the equivalent of nearly 10 passages of the Earth around the Sun, he and the unimaginable entities on that other world, hardly ever less than 35 million miles away, had labored on the colossal problem of intelligent communication. The results of their efforts had been small and discouraging. Yet in 10 or 20 years, even that gigantic enigma might have yielded to persistence, ingenuity, and the indomitable will to do. But now no such thing could be. In 40 days, number 774 would no longer exist, nor would there be another to carry on his work. Study of the Third World could not produce more food or make water more plentiful. The rulers would dismantle all the marvelous equipment that he had assembled to aid him in his quest for useless and impractical knowledge. The veil of mystery would remain drawn over Planet 3 for many thousands of years, perhaps forever. But it was the ruler's privilege to command and to expect unquestioning obedience. Never once in a millennium had their authority been disputed, for the very existence of the dominant race of Mars, a world aged almost to the limit of its ability to support life, depended on absolute Spartan loyalty and discipline. Revolt now was unheard of. It could not be. Did number 774 feel resentment over his fate? Or did he accept his sentence with the stoicism of a true child of Mars? There was no way of telling. His position was almost unduplicated in the annals of the Red Planet, and in consequence, his reactions may have been out of the ordinary. Almost never before had a creature of his kind wandered so far along the road of impractical knowledge, or had received the notice of the termination of lifespan so inopportunely. And so number 774 continued to gaze up at the green star that had been included in every dream and effort of its existence. Thoughts and feelings must have tumbled in riotous confusion inside his brain. After a while, Phobos, the nearer moon, mounted up over the western horizon and began its rapid march among the stars. There is a clarification and a footnote in this novella regarding the word Western. Mars rotates on its axis in 24 hours, 37 minutes, 22.67 seconds. Phobos, the nearer moon, which is only 3,700 miles distant from Mars, completes its orbit in only 7 hours, 39 minutes, thus circling its primary more than 3 times in every Martian day. Since Phobos follows its path in the same direction that the planet rotates, it is evident that to an observer on Mars, it would appear to rise in the west and set in the east. Its pallid radiance converted everything into a half-seen fairyland of tarnished silver and ebony, the dunes of the lonely desert extending mile on mile in every direction, the low, fort-like walls of number 774's workshop, the great shining dome of metal that capped it. Nothing was clearly discernible. Nothing seemed real. The coming of Phobos aroused number 774 from his lethargy. It may be that he realized that time was fleeting and that an hour could ill be spared from the 40 days of life that still remained to him. At a deft touch, the crystal pane that glazed the window before him slipped aside, and a faint night breeze, arid and chilled far below zero, blew in upon him. Edging his strange form forward, he leaned far out of the window and seemed intent upon creeping headlong down the rough stone wall. Long, slender portions of his anatomy clutched the sill, and he hung inverted like a roosting bat of earth. But otherwise, there was not the remotest resemblance between number 774 and a winged terrestrial mammal. If, by means of some miraculous transition, an Earthman had suddenly found himself standing there on the desert and looking up at the wall of the workshop close above, he might not even have recognized number 774 as a living creature in the shifting, uncertain moonlight. Amid the fantastic jumble of light and shade, he would have seen only a blob of rusty brown color that might have been just the distorted shadow of one of the stone projections that jutted from the wall. If he had looked closer, he might have believed that the thing he saw was a small bundle of ancient and rotten rags dangling from the window ledge, with long, loose tatters stirring idly in the faint breeze. Still, the glint of bright metal from number 774's equipment would have puzzled him, and perhaps his flesh would have tingled slightly at the suggestively gruesome aspect of this unknown and poorly illuminated object. From his dangling position, number 774 sucked a great breath of cold air into his complex breathing organs. The frigid tang of the night refreshed him and seemed to endow him with new life. One last glance he cast toward the glory of the Martian heavens. At sight of Earth and the thread-like speck of the comet, his great eyes, dark and limpid, and more nearly human than anything else about him, flashed briefly with a vague, slumberous suggestion of something pent up behind a barrier that was none too strong to hold it back. Then, number 774 drew himself up into the window. 3 jointed rods of metal unfolded themselves from the complicated arrangement of mechanisms that was fastened to his fragile body, and in a moment he was striding along on them like a man, down a green-lighted cylindrical passage that extended off into misty obscurity. A faint and regular clicking came from the device, but number 774 did not hear it. He knew of sound only as a vibration detectable by his keen sense of touch, and as a phenomenon registered by his scientific instruments. For number 774 had no organs of hearing. His steps seemed hurried and feverish. Perhaps some un-Martian plan was already half formulated in his restless and troubled mind. So far, I like the way that it's written. The style of the writing is quite good. I still don't know if it counts as a classic, but it is definitely well written. The tunnel debouched at last into a colossal chamber where gigantic flying buttresses swept up and up through a misty green glow to meet the sides of an enormous rotunda of white metal that roofed the room. Enigmatic forms of weird apparatus crowded in bewildering complexity against the walls. Tipped at a steep angle at the center of the floor was a vast cylinder of webby girders. Piercing the dome opposite the upper end of the cylinder was a circular opening through which a portion of the starlit sky was visible, and at the base of the cylinder a great bowl rotated rapidly like a huge wheel. Here was the observatory of number 774, housing his telescope, and here were the controlling mechanisms of his signaling apparatus. He hurried up a steel ramp, from the upper end of which he could look down into the interior of the great rotating bowl. His eyes glanced critically over the device, searching for any possible slight disorder in its function, but there was none. To an Earthman acquainted with astronomical equipment, the purpose of the rotating bowl would have been at once apparent, and he would have marveled at the simple cleverness of this piece of Martian ingenuity. The bowl contained mercury. As the container spun on its perfectly balanced axis, centrifugal force caused the mercury to spread in a thin, precisely distributed layer over the inside of the bowl, forming a convex surface that acted admirably as a mirror for number 774's gigantic reflecting telescope. Its area and its consequent light collecting capacity was many times greater than any rigid mirror that could have been constructed without flaws. Satisfied with his inspection, number 774 hoisted himself nimbly to a small platform, high placed among the spidery girders of the chamber. His movements were quick and cat-like, yet coolly efficient, and he seemed bent upon making use of every moment of life that remained to him. His eyes, almost lambent with eagerness, he stared into the large crystal sphere which the platform supported. From a prismatic arrangement fixed to the telescope arrangement above, an invisible beam of light came down, impinging on the sphere, and causing the picture which number 774 was so intent upon to appear. In the depths of the crystal was an image of the third world, Earth. Since it was to sunward and nearing inferior conjunction with Mars, most of its surface that was turned to the red planet was in shadow and could not be seen. Only a thin curve of light fringed one hemisphere. Visible in the crescent were mottled areas of gray and green and brown, which number 774 knew were oceans. Oh, and we are being rated. Welcome in, raiders. Hello, 16-bit Eric. I hope that Breath of the Wild did you well. I hope you had a good time. Welcome in, everybody. If you are new here, I am Rogan27, aka Anthony Wright Day Hernandez. I'm the Community Collections Archivist at Virginia Tech, and this is Archival Adventures, a show that I do once a week, where we look at things from archives and special collections and learn. So welcome in. It's great to have you here. If anybody who was already here is not following 16-bit Eric, how did you find me first? You should definitely drop a follow to 16-bit Eric. Hi Thorkel. Hi Pretty Witchery. Welcome everybody. Today we are looking at number 11 from Sam Moskowitz's list of sci-fi classics. The list was created in 1940, and all of the classics were published in 1933, 34, or 35, meaning they're all less than 10 years old at the time he called them classics. And what we've been doing is looking at them and deciding, do they live up to the term? And so far, of the 10 we've looked at, probably. Moskowitz was a sci-fi critic, so he supposedly had authority to make that distinction, but I will say I had not really ever heard of the authors or the stories, but they've been really good so far. The one we're reading today is Old Faithful by Raymond Gallun. The illustration that is with it is by Elliot Dold, and it's an excellent piece of Elliot Dold's. And so far we have been following the story of number 774, this Martian creature here, who the rulers have decided does not get an extension on his life and must die for the greater whole in 40 days. And his work has been focused on the third planet from the sun and learning as much as possible about what appear to be intelligent creatures that live on that third planet being Earth. So it is a Martian discovering that there are intelligent creatures on Earth, trying to communicate with them via light pulses. But he lives in a society that's very much like the one in Logan's Run, if you're familiar with that movie, where once they reach a certain age, they are required to die unless an exception is given. And since the rulers deem his work to be wasteful and unnecessary, an extension was not given. There is actually a TNG episode as well. I don't remember specifically which one, Oh, that's the one. That's a Lwaxana Troy episode. Oh my gosh, 16-bit Eric, thank you so much for the 50-month resubscription. Wow. I very much appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna dive back into the story. If I can figure out where I was. Okay, visible in the crescent were mottled areas of gray and green and brown, which number 774 knew were oceans, continents, deserts, and the verdant countryside. The shifting blurs of clouds, the winding rivers, and the snow-capped mountain chains he could recognize and understand too, but there was so much that distance and the distorting effects of two atmospheres left hidden and seemingly unattainable. Things about which he had longed so passionately to see and to know. A delicate bundle of pink filaments that terminated one of number 774's stalk-like limbs rested on a tiny lever before him. The thread-like tentacles That's the first word that I've significantly tripped over today. So I'm doing pretty good. The thread-like tentacles, marvelously adapted and trained for the finest and most accurate sort of work, moved the lever slightly to the right. Ooh, it's season 4, episode 22 of The Next Generation, Half a Life. Thank you, Pretty Witchery. Immediately, there was responding movement in the heavy parts of the huge telescope, and the image of Planet 3 in the crystal globe began to grow. Mountains loomed larger, seas and continents swelled, until the whole of the image of the terrestrial sphere could not occupy the globe, and all that could be seen was a small part of the illuminated crescent. For a while, as the increase in magnification went on, details on Planet 3 were brought more clearly into view. But presently, as the picture grew larger and larger, it began to tremble and to undulate, as if it was seen through a million atmospheric heat waves. As the power of the telescope was increased still further, the flickering, jumping, shifting luminescence that appeared in the vision globe became totally incoherent and meaningless, and bore no slight relationship to an earthly scene. Number 774's huge optical instrument was failing before one of the same obstacles to magnification that terrestrial observers have noted in their telescopes: the gaseous envelopes of Earth and Mars, with their countless irregular air currents and varying indices of refraction due to differences in temperature and humidity, were distorting the image-bearing rays of light coming from Earth across 50 million miles of space, and rendering magnification beyond a certain point useless. Hi, Castabras. The telescope of number 774 still had many Martian units of magnification in reserve, but for probing into the mysteries of Planet 3, that reserve was of not the least value. Still, number 774 often gave his instrument full power, in the vain hope, perhaps, that someday, by some trick of fate, the atmospheres of the two worlds would be quiet enough and clear enough to give him a momentary glimpse into the unknown. But the opportunity for such a glimpse had never come. Cool and collected, number 774 brought his telescope back to the limit of effective magnification. In response to the manipulation of some instrument, the image of Planet 3 shifted so that no portion of the crescent was visible. The crystal globe was dark. But number 774 knew that the third world was within the field of view. Unerringly, guided by his instruments, he fixed his telescope on a certain spot on the dark side of Planet 3. He knew that shrouded in the shadows of the night hemisphere of that distant world, there was a great continent extending broad and diversified between two vast oceans. It had lofty ranges of snow-crowned mountains, extensive plains, green with an unknown vegetation, great lakes, and winding rivers. In the southwestern portion of that continent was a desert, and near the edge of that desert was the place of the light. The light that was the voice of the friend he had never seen, and whose form was unimaginable to him, much though he might imagine and long to know. The light was not there now, only the vague white blurs of earthly cities dotting the darkened continent, adding the mystery of their existence to the enigma of Planet 3. But number 774 was not troubled by the absence of the light, for he had faith in it. When he had signaled, it had always appeared in answer. It would appear this time too. At his touch, a vast mechanism in a room far beneath the chamber of the telescope began to function silently and efficiently, building up power. Feeble and delicate and hideous though number 774 was, by earthly standards, at a mere gesture he could evoke forces that were worthy of the gods. Number 774 watched a Martian version of a potentiometer. It was not like a terrestrial potentiometer. It had no graduated scale, no nervous pointer. It was just a globe of something that looked like frosted glass, from which a soft luminescence proceeded. Does everybody know what a potentiometer is? I don't. At least I can't picture one in my head because I can't picture things in my head. Which means I don't really remember what one looks like. So I'm going to try to find an image of one. None of these seem like things that an average person would ever have seen. So okay. That's a little bit better. I'll share. And we'll get a definition for sure. I had to specify a date range because this is not what they look like now. But this is a vintage potentiometer. Back to Wikipedia and just look up, find out what one is. If it works. This article is about the electrical component for the measuring instrument. Ooh, which one do we want? I think we want the measuring instrument, based on the description of it having a graduated scale and a nervous pointer. Oh, and we are actually about to be attacked by some advertisements. So I'm going to, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll dive into what is a potentiometer and get back to the story. See you soon. Okay. Welcome back. The advertisements should be done attacking us, so let's go back to learning about potentiometers. A potentiometer is an instrument for measuring voltage or potential difference by comparison of an unknown voltage with a known reference voltage. If any of my electrical engineering viewers are in chat and want to weigh in, please do. If a sensitive indicating instrument is used, very little current is drawn from the source of the unknown voltage. Since the reference voltage can be produced from an accurately calibrated voltage divider, a potentiometer can provide high precision in measurement. The method was described by Johann Christian Poggendorff around 1841 and became a standard laboratory measuring technique. In this arrangement, a fraction of a known voltage from a resistive slide wire is compared with an unknown voltage by means of a galvanometer. The sliding contact or wiper of the potentiometer is adjusted and the galvanometer briefly connected between the sliding contact and the unknown voltage. The deflection of the galvanometer is observed and the sliding tap adjusted until the galvanometer no longer deflects from zero. At that point, the galvanometer draws no current from the unknown source and the magnitude of voltage can be calculated from the position of the sliding contact. Blech. This null balance measuring method is still important in electrical metrology and standards work and is also used in other areas of electronics. There are 4 classes of measuring potentiometers. Oh my, Shadows of Life. Metrology, the scientific study of measurement. I knew what it meant as soon as I saw it, but I had never seen that word before. Here's a dial potentiometer with built-in galvanometer and reference voltage source. Both types are adjustable resistors, but this one has a readout and further use. As it was being described, what was coming to my mind was the instruments that are used to record seismic vibrations, which I think it's a similar concept, but not the same instrument. But that's what was coming to my mind. An amp meter. So the principle of operation, this should be useful. The principle of a potentiometer is that the potential dropped across a segment of a wire of uniform cross-section carrying a constant current is directly proportional to its length. Okay, maybe it won't be as useful as I thought. The potentiometer is a simple device that apparently needs complexity to explain. Used to measure the electrical potentials or compare the EMF of a cell. One form of potentiometer is a uniform high-resistance wire attached to an insulating support marked with a linear measuring scale. In use, an adjustable regulated voltage source E of greater magnitude than the potential to be measured. I mean, I could parse this out, but I was really looking for a simple explanation. This is... I'm sure this is accurate. This is a little bit too technical of an explanation for Wikipedia. Wikipedia really should be an explanation that is generally understandable without a need for in-depth technical knowledge. The way this is described, assumes a lot of knowledge with regard to electrical terminology and like there's a lot of domain knowledge here that is assumed and not really provided. High some silica, sliding potentiometer adds resistance. Closer to the contact is less, and the farther away, the more resistance is added. Then you compare the source voltage. Thorkel, I think, essentially yes. The potentiometer, it's a measuring device to measure potential energy. So I just don't think that I don't know that it is succinctly explained. Like, I don't mind the detail being here in the Wikipedia article, but they never really gave a simple, straightforward explanation of, but what does it do in like, and clearly they're saying it needs some, but yeah, instrument for measuring the voltage, or an instrument for measuring voltage by comparing an unknown voltage with a known reference voltage. That is, actually, I guess that is the succinct, straightforward, easy to understand explanation, as long as you understand what voltage is. Which is electrical potential difference, electrical pressure, or electric tension. The difference in electric potential between 2 points. Okay, so it is, a potentiometer is an instrument for measuring electrical potential, is my understanding. If I'm wrong, tell me. But I'm gonna go back to the story now. I'm uncertain why number 774 has a potentiometer, but maybe we'll find out. Number 774 watched a Martian version of a potentiometer. It was not like a terrestrial potentiometer. It had no graduated scale, no nervous pointer. It was just a globe of something that looked like frosted glass from which a soft luminescence proceeded. Because it sounds cool and sci-fi-y. That would make sense for a lot of authors. Given the hints that I've seen so far in this story, I actually expect this story to be slightly more on the hard sci-fi side, meaning based in actual scientific knowledge and theory, rather than fantastical imagination. So when he brings up a potentiometer, I'm sort of expecting that he knows what one is, what it's used for, and there's a reason it's here. First, number 774 saw in its depths a slumberous glow of a beautiful shade, quite unknown and unseeable to human eyes. It was what is called infrared on Earth. The color being invisible to men was, of course, quite indescribable, but to number 774, it was as common as blue or yellow for his eyes, like the eyes of some of the lower forms of Earth were constructed to see it. In addition, like all Martians, he was able to distinguish the slightest difference between one shade of color and another. It is upon this fact that Martians depend for the accurate reading of instruments which among men would ordinarily have pointers and graduated scales. In any Martian meter, infrared And of course, the various shades of infrared in their order of appearance in the spectrum means a low reading. Red and the shades of red advancing toward orange constitute somewhat higher readings. Orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet are progressively higher, while the shade at the extreme outer end of the ultraviolet band, which Martian eyes can also see, represents the highest reading. In short, light of various wavelengths is used in practically all Martian meters to designate readings. Low readings are represented by long wavelengths near the infrared end of the spectrum, while high readings are designated by short wavelengths of light near the ultraviolet end of the spectrum. Number 774 waited until the changing kaleidoscope of ordinary colors had passed, and the delicate hue of ultraviolet had reached its maximum in the globe of the potentiometer before he made any further move. Then his tense body swayed forward, closing a complicated switch. The result was instantaneous. Through the circular opening in the rotunda at which the muzzle of the telescope was pointed, a dazzling blaze of incandescence was visible in a sudden tremendous flash. The detonation that accompanied it was of a magnitude which one would have scarcely believed the rarefied atmosphere of old Mars capable of transmitting. The whole building, solidly constructed though it was, trembled with the concussion. For a moment, the Martian night within a radius of 20 miles or more of number 774's workshop became brighter than midday, as an enormous store of energy released from the outer surface of the metal dome which capped the observatory poured suddenly into the atmosphere, thus forming above the workshop a vast canopy of cold light, far more intense than any aurora borealis of Earth. But the sudden flare died out as quickly as it had come. The echoes of the crash faded, and the calm of lonely desert and stars reasserted itself. Some eerie monster, which had unwittingly buried itself in the sand too close to the lair of number 774, scrambled out of its warm sleeping place amid a cloud of dust, and on gauzy wings sped hurriedly away from the zone of the thunder that had terrified it. As it flew, its fantastic shadow bobbed crazily over the moonlit sand. But number 774 was quite oblivious of any fears his experiments might arouse in the creatures of Mars. As far as his mind was concerned, for the time being, things Martian had almost ceased to exist for him. Earth, Planet 3, claimed all his attention, and there was room for nothing else. He had given his sign. Now he would wait for the answer that was sure to come. It would take approximately 9 minutes for Earth to get signals back to him, for that was the time which light, traveling at a speed of 186,000 miles per second, required to bridge twice the 50 million For that was the time which light, traveling at a speed of 186,000 miles per second, required to bridge twice the 50 million mile void lying between the two planets. Number 774's weird, fragile body hunched eagerly forward on the small mat on which he squatted. His great eyes burned with the same fire of fascination which they had held when a little while ago he had gazed up at Earth and the approaching comet from the window in the wall of his workshop. Unwaveringly, they were fixed on the spot in the darkened vision globe where the light would appear. Sometimes that light was too dim for his trained and sensitive eyes to see, but arranged and hooded on a carefully shaded portion of the vision globe was a Martian photoelectric cell which would pick up the faintest of light signals and convert them into electrical impulses which would be amplified and relayed to an instrument close beside number 774. This instrument would reproduce the signals just as they came from Earth, but bright enough to be easily watched. Another device would record each flash for later study. Chapter 2. The body of number 774 tensed suddenly. There was the first signal flickering faint and feeble across the millions of miles of space, yet on the desert of Earth it doubtless represented flashes almost comparable with those which number 774's powerful sending equipment produced. Number 774 could barely see them in his vision globe, but the little glass bulb of the reproducing apparatus flickered them out plain and clear. Long flashes, short flashes, representing the dots and dashes of the Morse code of Earth. Flash, 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 flash. Hello, Mars. Hello, Mars. Hello, Mars. Earth calling. Earth calling. Earth calling, the message spelled. And number 774 was grimly in the midst of the colossal task he had set for himself. Lurking in the back of his mind was the realization that his death was decreed and that soon, unless something unprecedented happened, all this work of his and of his friend of the light must end, unfinished, before the intelligences of two worlds could really meet and exchange ideas freely. But it did not divert him or make his attention to the task in hand less keen. In fact, it seemed to sharpen his wits and to add pressure to his determination. Still, his mind seemed divided into two parts, one of which was cool and logical and scientific, the other in a turmoil, fighting with itself and its loyalty to time-honored traditions. Hello, Mars! Hello, Mars! Earth calling. Man of Mars is late, 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 late. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 4 and 5 are 9. 2 times 3 is 6. Man of Mars is late, 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 late. How much of this queer jangle of light flashes spelling out Earth words and numbers in the Morse code did number 774 understand? How much could he understand? Intelligent comprehension of anything new is almost always based on an understanding of similar things previously in the experience of the individual in question. The mind of number 774 was brilliantly clever and methodical, but what can an Earthman and a Martian have in common? Many points of contact exist, it is true, but for two entities so far removed from one another in physical form, senses, environment, and modes of living, with not the vaguest conception of what the other upon the distant world is like, such similarities of experience are extremely hard to find. In the first place, the messages that were coming to number 774 were the code representations of alphabetical letters standing for various sounds which, when taken in groups, made up words of vocal speech. As previously stated, number 774 had no idea of sound, except as an interesting phenomenon recorded by his scientific instruments, and as a vibration detectable by his touch sense in the same way that human beings can feel sound vibrations in solid objects. He had no ears, neither did he have well-developed vocal organs. Strange as it may seem to us, prior to his experience with the light, he had not the faintest idea of what a word was, either a vocal word or a written word, or a word represented in the form of a group of signals. Because Martian methods of communicating with one another and of recording knowledge are so different from ours, a word would have been as great a mystery to him as it would have been to a newborn kitten. Describing sound to him as we know it through our sense of hearing would have been as hopeless a task as describing red to a man who has been stone blind since birth. It simply could not be done. He might know that sound and vocal speech existed, but short of trading actual sensations with an Earthman, he could never fully comprehend. Neither could he have told us in any way how the color of ultraviolet or infrared looked, for such things are totally out of our experience. In the face of these enormous handicaps, in spite of his intelligence and scientific knowledge, he had been like a little child, humbly and intensely eager to learn, yet bungling and quick to make mistakes, which from an Earthman's point of view would often have seemed more than childish. Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. Exactly, Kastavros. I was also thinking of Project Hail Mary, which is a wonderful modern novel that explores communication. And if you have any interest in reading the book before the movie comes out, because they're making a movie of it, this is the same author who wrote The Martian. Andy Weir, I believe, is the author's name. Project Hail Mary, I would recommend listening to the audiobook if you have any interest in audiobooks at all. It is extremely well done. The way they represent the differences in communication styles as human and alien learn to talk to one another. So there's a theme right there that has at least made its way into two forms of modern fiction. Project Hail Mary. I was gonna just grab the publisher's link and let you find it from there. There's the link to the book on the publisher's website, and hopefully it will help you find it in whatever form will best suit you. Okay. Once he had tried a method of his own of establishing communication, if Earth had been peopled by a race physically and psychologically similar to the Martians, quick success might have been expected. But his efforts had evoked only a, to him, meaningless jumble of flashes from the light. Realizing that his method was not suited to Earthmen, he had given up trying to be a teacher and had assumed instead the role of conscientious pupil. Hello, Mars! Those two groupings of symbols had always been the beginning of every message flashed by the light. But except for seeing the unmistakable evidence of intelligence in the oft-repeated and unvarying signal, number 774 had been quite unable, at first, to grasp in it any thread of meaning. A greeting phrase was, if possible, even more incomprehensible to him than a word itself. Try as he might, he could not understand. On Mars, where speech is not the mode of communication, greeting phrases did not exist. Then, earthly genius, doubtless assisted by a great deal... Then earthly genius, doubtless assisted a great deal by chance, had come to his aid. Number 774 had no difficulty in separating the 26 alphabetical symbols of the Morse code. Nor when the Earth entities controlling the flickerings of the light had sent out code symbols for numerals in a sequence of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, did he have any trouble in recognizing and cataloging each separate signal, though their meanings were still entirely unfathomable to him. It was when the counting proceeded above 9 and numbers of more than one digit appeared that number 774, after a long period of association with the riddle, had received his first faint glimmer of understanding. no, it was not really understanding yet, just a vague, intuitive intimation that something concrete and graspable was not far off. He had noted that there were but 10 separate signals in this strange system, which was apparently quite distinct from that other mysterious system of 26 symbols, for the two had never yet been mixed in one signal group or word, and that, as the flashing of the signals proceeded, each symbol seemed to bear a definite relationship to the others. They always were in fixed sequence. 1 was followed by 2, 2 by 3, and so on, through a sequence of 10. The first symbol of a 2-digit number was always repeated 10 times as the counting went on, while the second symbol changed according to the fixed rule which he had already noted. Perhaps number 774 already had a dim notion of the terrestrial numeral system when his friend of the light conceived the plan of sending simple problems of arithmetic. Obviously, 1 plus 1 of anything is 2 on the planet Mars, just as certainly as it is on Earth. There was the real beginning. Number 774 had studied carefully the simple equations that had come to him, and at length he had been able to grasp what was meant. In a message like 3 and 3 are 6, he was presently able to see the relationship between the numeral signals. The last in the group was the sum of the preceding two. Finally, he understood. Here was some quaint terrestrial method of expressing the unit quantity of anything. The first point of contact between Earth and Mars had been established. Flushed with success, number 774 had made rapid progress for a while after he had learned about the terrestrial decimal system. If 3 and 3 are 6 and 2 and 5 are 7, then 4 and 5 are 9, reproducing faithfully, though without clear comprehension, the intermediate letter groups of the earthly equation he had invented. A N D and A R E, he had flashed the equation to his friend of the light. 4 and 5 are 9. And the answering flicker of the light seemed to dance with an eager exultation. 4 and 5 are 9. 4 and 5 are 9. Yes, yes, yes. 5 and 5 are 10. 8 and 4 are 12. 9 and 7 are? 9 and 7 are? Keyed to a high pitch, number 774 had sensed immediately what was required of him. Answers were wanted, though two-digit numbers were still something of a mystery to him, making his reply partly guesswork. He lit upon the correct representation of the sum. 9 and 7 are 16. Through the succeeding months, during which the positions of the two planets were favorable for astronomical observation of each other, the work had gone on, various methods being employed. Sometimes number 774 presented his own problems of addition, giving the answers. If his answer was correct, the light invariably flashed yes, 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 exultantly, and repeated the equation. On those rare occasions, when the problems became more complex, number 774 made mistakes. The answering message was no, 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 and the correction was made. Thus, number 774 had gained his first knowledge of words, as represented by the 26-letter code alphabet. Yes, yes, yes meant that he was right, and no, no, no meant that he was wrong. It trickled into his mind that each group of alphabetical symbols represented in its crude way some definite idea, and R in a simple addition problem, showed certain relationships between the numbers, and those relationships were different than the ones expressed by other words. A mistake he had once made had clearly demonstrated this fact to him. It was in the transition from addition problems to problems of multiplication. 10 and 2 was different from 10 times 2. 10 and 2 made 12, while 10 times 2 made 20. Times represented a different relationship between numbers than and. One indicated that the sum was to be taken, while the other indicated that the two were to be multiplied together. In a similar way, he found out what divided by, plus, minus, and other words meant by noting the relationship to the numbers of the equation, by noting the relationship of the numbers of the equation to the final answer. Once understanding simple division, as it is done on Earth, number 774 quickly grasped the decimal position system of representing fractions. In an equation like 36 divided by 5 equals 7.2, he could substitute Martian methods of representing values and division and correlate them with terrestrial methods. In the Martian way, he knew what 36 divided by 5 was, and of course his answer thus obtained might just as well be represented by the earthly 7.2, for they were the same. Number 774 had found in the number 3.1416, part of which was a decimal fraction, the relationship of the circumference of a circle to its diameter, and so the oft-repeated message of the light, diameter times 3.1416 equals the circumference of a circle, had a certain vague meaning for him that was not by any means complete understanding at once. Earth, planet 3, Mars, planet 4, was a message he was able to guess the meaning of correctly because in the Martian system, numbers were used to designate planets in their order from the sun. Aided by the message Earth planet 3 has 1 moon, Mars planet 4 has 2 moons, he had been able half to clinch his guess. Stumblingly, yet reproducing the Earth words with the faithfulness of a good mimic, he had flashed planet 1 has 0 moons, planet 2 has 0 moons, Earth planet 3 has 1 moon, Mars planet 4 has 2, and an enthusiastic yes, yes, yes had come from the light, and the dim flickering glow had gone on to tell that Mercury, planet 1, has no moon, Venus, planet 2, has no moon, Jupiter, planet 5, has 9 moons, Saturn, planet 6, has 10 moons, and so on out to Pluto, planet 9, beyond Neptune. Thus, number 774 had learned the names of the planets and the meaning of the words moon and planet. In the same way, he received a dim idea of such simple verbs as has. I imagine there would be some confusion around the meaning of planet, given that in 1934 we all agreed that there were 9 planets. And today, there are 8 planets and a number of dwarf planets. So we can't assume that they would agree on the number of moons or that they would agree on the number of planets. And so if we started signaling about planet 9 and saying it has no moon, the Martians might not consider Pluto a planet. And if they did, they might say it has 4 moons because Pluto has, I don't remember, 4 or 5 moons. But technically speaking, Charon is roughly the same size as Pluto, and so they might be considered a binary dwarf planet system, except that Charon very clearly orbits around Pluto, as do the other moons of Pluto. Therefore, we call it a moon because all of the moons orbit Pluto, not the binary pair. But anyway, yeah, and we found a new moon for Uranus this month. Yeah, and they're still discovering more moons of Saturn, and there's theories that we have a second moon, that the Earth has a second moon, or that we will, for a limited period of time, capture a meteor or comet that will become a moon of Earth, a second moon of Earth, for a brief period of time before it is ejected. There's talk of a potential third moon for Mars. Like, there's lots of confusion about what is what and which is who. And yeah, I saw a thing recently about some scientists predicting a ninth planet, and I'm like, no, the number 9 was retired when we removed Pluto. I refuse to accept a replacement. Yes, and the the mathematically indicated 9th planet is supposed to be extremely far out. It is mathematically predicted to be a gas type planet similar to Uranus or Neptune, but out at like the far fringes of the Oort cloud. And the theory is that it, formed in closer to the sun and then was basically flung out to a far distance by Jupiter, and that it has a very long elliptical orbit, and that basically all of human history it has been at the far end of its orbit, and so we never even have come close to seeing it. But mathematically, the system works, and there should be a body of some sort that is theorized to be an icy gas planet very far out there that could be on its way back. We don't know. Feel like temporarily captured asteroids shouldn't be called moons, as otherwise we might as well call all satellites moons. I would agree, Neoguts. I don't remember. I think it was last year that I saw news articles about Earth's second moon. But it was going to be a transient moon because it was going to be captured and then ejected. So it's not like we were gaining an additional moon permanently. But I don't remember the period of time that we're supposed to have a second moon. And I don't recall whether there's any chance that we would even know it, because moons don't have to be close by. In fact, our moon is slowly migrating further away from the Earth through the orbital mechanics of the Sol system, and will presumably one day in the far, far future get ejected from our orbit, and Earth will then no longer have a moon and will likely suffer significant geological consequences as our axial tilt wobbles, and we'll end up with something more akin to Mars, where Mars, over the course of its lifetime, the poles have gone from north-south all the way down 90 degrees to where the north-south poles were, with regard to the plane of the ecliptic, flat, and then and it tilts back up. So even like basically the loss of the moon, the moon helps to stabilize the Earth so that we don't wobble, at least not as drastically, which helps to keep us at the angle that we're at, which is why we have seasons, which is the tides are important. The axial tilt of the Earth is important for generating the seasons and this, all of that. The complexity of the Earth, of the Terra Luna Sol mechanics, they work for life as we know it. And at some point, Luna will no longer be held by the Earth. Now, I don't know when that's theorized to happen. I know it's far, far future. I don't know if it will happen before the sun expands into a red giant and eats the Earth anyway. But if the moon sheared off, if it broke free from Earth's gravity, the geology and seasons of Earth would become extremely variable, and it would be bad. I happen to be an aficionado of apocalyptic science fiction thrillers. I enjoy a good natural disaster book / movie. So this is a topic that I'm familiar with. Yeah. Okay. We are approaching the end of our time today. I want to see... I mean, there's no way we're going to finish this. This is... got additional chapters. I knew when it was called a novella that there was a good chance that we won't finish it on stream. So I'll have to find the text or a link to a place where you can access it. If I can find the text somewhere online that is freely accessible, I will. Otherwise, I will point towards one of the publications where you can get the full story. And this is the first of a multi-volume series that has at least 3 books in it. They grow up so fast and can't wait to leave home. Luna, yeah. I think... Okay, so let's talk about, does this meet the definition of classic? Would we consider this to be a classic of science fiction? Luna trying not to catch Terra's infestation. This one is actually a harder classification as classic for me. It's a great story. I think it's wonderfully told, and really well done. And I want to continue reading it. But unlike a lot of the others on the list, I feel like it doesn't... I don't see as many widely used tropes. The others, it was like, oh yeah, and this feels like the origin story of a Batman villain, or this feels like... we could see how it's been used again and again and again since the story was written. This one, 1934. So well before Mars had our robots. The concept of parsing language and honestly the idea of communicating with alien intelligence, that has persisted. We've got plenty of stories about that. That's Contact with Jodie Foster. That's Dharmak and Jalad at Tanagra. It's present in many things. This is not the origin of that, but I think it's a really good example. I love that it takes the perspective of a Martian, and we're getting the story from the Martian's perspective. We, because we're human, know what the broadcasts say. The storyteller has provided us with the translation of the Morse code, even though number 774 has not figured out what it says yet. I love the exploration of the differentiation of just knowledge structure and communication style by creating an alien species that has no auditory or vocal system in any way. It's an alien species that does not have a concept for vocal speech. And having to understand Morse code, which is a translation of letters that are combined in various ways to represent vocal speech sounds. Like, that's 3 steps removed already. So just the exploration of how difficult that communication would be, and the start with beginning to understand it with mathematics, those themes are definitely present in a lot of fiction when it comes to SETI and just theories behind the communication. If you look at like Star Trek Enterprise and Hoshi Sato, the episodes that deal with her trying to figure out the alien languages, it's sort of there. Dots to letters, to written words, to spoken language, to concepts. Exactly. Like, it is layers distant. And I think it's really well represented here. And the book by Andy Weir that I linked earlier, Project Hail Mary, does a similar thing, only it's from the human side. But it's a similar kind of, it has that, how do they interface? How do they do productive cooperation when they fundamentally cannot communicate with each other at the start? It reminds me of a thing I saw asking a blind person if they could imagine that distant objects appear smaller. Without experience of vision, no. And yeah, that makes sense. It's similar to like when I learned that when TV shows showed hallucination or things like that, when TV shows would represent somebody imagining something or hallucinating something, I always thought that they were just significantly overdoing it. I was like, oh, that's just a representation of, so that we know. I literally thought it was just a convention in form, because when people talked about imagining things, I had no concept that they actually meant being able to have a mental image of the thing. Because I do not have mental imagery at all. And it was just completely like, I don't understand mental imagery. Distant spoken words are quiet. Yeah. Distantly spoken. Yeah, that would. I love stories that explore communication where the two parties experience the world inherently differently. Exactly. And this story does that well. So once I get this up on YouTube, I will have a link in the VOD description hopefully to the remaining text of this story, but if not, then pointing to information about where you can get access to this story and its sequels. Because I won't be finishing it on stream, because I just have these 2 hours to devote to this story, but yeah, I think this continues to be an interesting experiment to sort of look at this list, and I do agree these have been great stories, the ones that are on this list. Oh, I have sound. Yeah, I can read music and hear it in my head. And it's never been, that never seemed weird to me that I could hear music in my head but not see pictures in my head. But it wasn't until I read about the proposed diagnosis of aphantasia that I realized that when people talked about imagining things in their head, they actually saw pictures. So, yeah, I was like, huh? Whatever. That is all the time that we have for today. Some people have no internal monologue. That is true. Yeah, I have it. We exist on various spectra. Okay, let's do some credits here, and then we'll need to. I'll send you all off to hang out in somebody else's stream. So yes, credits. Me, my former student assistant. Thank you to my moderators who were here today, Hannah and Lord Portico and Elixir. Thank you, Fluidan and 16-Bit Eric for the resubscriptions. Thank you, 16-Bit Eric, for the raid. And of course, thank you to Lo-Fi Girl for the music and letting us use it on the internet. Which is not just a thing that I get to do. Lo-Fi Girl's music is generally available. Let me pull up and see, where are we going to go if my computer will cooperate. Well, oh wow, we've done educationally type things the last couple weeks. I think today we're going to head over to our good friend Stephen Joyce, who was in chat earlier and was randomly selected by the bot as a VIP for the stream. So I feel that rating Stephen today is very appropriate. So I invite you all to join me for Tiny Hats and a wonderful, wonderful community over on Stephen Joyce's channel. We'll get that raid going here in just a second. Coming up next time, let's see. Next time, I believe, is just next week. Indeed, next week we will have some NASA material from Robert Gilruth. Robert Gilruth was the project coordinator for Project Mercury. And yeah, we're gonna look at I've got his collection, so we'll take a look, see what we can learn. So that will be next Wednesday, and hopefully I will see some of you then. Thank you all so much for joining me. This continues to be an amazing and wonderful experience. And I appreciate all of you for hanging out and just seeing the random things that I find in the archives. Thanks for joining. I hope I see you again soon. Until I do, keep exploring history, everybody.